Keep on riding with us as we continue to broadcast the balance and defend the discourse from the Hip Hop Weekly studios. Welcome back to Civic Cipher. I am your host, Ramses Ja.
He is Ramses Ja. I am Q Ward. You are tuned in to Civic Cipher.
Indeed you are. And we still got some more Cipher life in store for you, so stick around for that. We are going to be spending some time discussing what it means to be blinded by privilege. This is going to be a big one, so buckle up, because a lot of people have a tough time with this. People cannot see how things are easy for them, and as a result they think that they work harder than everybody else and they deserve everything that they have, instead of reframing things around a set of fortunate circumstances into which they were born. We're going to do our best to explain how you can easily be blinded by that. Indeed, we all are, even us sometimes. Before we get there, though, it's time to discuss BABA, Becoming a Better Ally Baba. And today's Baba is sponsored by Friends of the Movement. You can sign up for the free voter wallet from FOTMglobal.com to support Black businesses and allied businesses, as well as make an impact with your spending. Again, that's FOTMglobal.com. And today, we are going to ask you to donate to the National Urban League. That is NUL.org. And I'm going to share just from their website. Join the fight against unfair laws, job limitations, and racial inequality. We provide direct and free services to 2 million people across the country and are making a real impact on communities. But we can't do it without your help. Many individuals support the National Urban League movement through a variety of opportunities that allow the public to donate in an easy and convenient way. We are here on the ground across the nation to help people from all walks of life and communities with urgency, expertise, and compassion. Your donation is vital to our work and will help to ensure that our services remain free of charge. And there's a quote that I want to share. I think it's beautiful. Quote, "Every man is our brother, and every man's burden is our own. Where poverty exists, we are all poorer. Where hate flourishes, we are all corrupted. Where injustice reigns, we are all unequal." And that's from Whitney M. Young. And then they add another thing here I want you to keep with you. Making a gift can be as simple as texting NUL give to 41444 or visiting, again, NUL.org. And while we're here, I do want to take a moment to share with you that Q and I will be speaking at the National Urban League Conference it might be later next week. We might be doing that.
Their national convention.
National convention, that's correct. So we will be there on the ground presenting.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans, indeed. So again, check out NUL.org, not only to make a donation, but to get more information on what's going on and maybe how you can even tap in with us while we're down there. Now, we're going to talk about what it means to be blinded by privilege. And before I unbuckle Q, allow me to share just a brief story that kind of inspired this thought. This comes from the Black Information Network, okay? A GOP lawmaker is facing backlash after referring to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre as a, quote, DEI hire. Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert suggested that Jean-Pierre was only hired to fill a diversity quota. Quote, "I couldn't care less about what @PressSec has to say today," she tweeted. Quote, "It's between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., which means, quote, President Joe Biden should be coherent enough to take a few questions from the press. Instead, Americans are supposed to listen to the discredited DEI hire pass," end quote. Jean-Pierre was named White House Press Secretary in 2022 after serving as the Deputy Press Secretary. She previously worked on former President Barack Obama's and Senator John Edwards' presidential campaigns. So what we're saying here is that this woman, Lauren Boebert, I don't want to say that she's a racist person.
Why don't you want to say so?
Because it's easy. I'm not saying it's not true. It's easy to say that and then dismiss this. What I want to do is focus on, because she wouldn't say that about herself, but what I want to do is make a point about her being blinded by her own privilege. Okay. So again, we're not going to say that she's just being racist. Again, because that's the easy thing to do. It's factual, I believe, and it's right there for anybody to take it. But I think there's a deeper level here that all of us can benefit from learning and understanding, right? So let me back up a bit. The press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, she was the deputy press secretary until 2022. And prior to that, she worked on Obama's and John Edwards' presidential campaigns, right? So you're talking about going back, geez, how long ago was that? 2000 and, let's see, Obama was, what, 08? So you're talking 2004?
She started working for Senator Edwards in 2004, yeah.
Yeah, so 2004, so my math's good. So what we have is a woman who's been more or less in the same job for 20 years. 20 years on the job experience is more, it qualifies you better than a degree. It qualifies you better than just about anything.
However, she has her master's from Columbia
let's
in
add
public
that.
affairs.
Let's add that, okay? Now, this isn't necessarily
just in case you want to disqualify her on the lack of merit in one of those areas, lack of experience or lack of education. She checks both boxes.
Oh yeah, you don't
with a bullet.
Yeah, you don't make it to the White House unless you do, right? But
well,
the presidency.
I'll push back.
The presidency, you might be able to. We've seen Bush, we've seen Trump. Yeah, I get you. But
even Bush, however, was a lawmaker before he was the president.
That's fair. Fair point.
This other guy.
There's you can so
and the people he plans to bring with him.
You know what's interesting? While we're here, it's interesting because this country was always supposed to be have a government that was for the people, by the people, right? And there are other parts of the world where they think that's absolutely crazy. How in the world can people govern themselves? This is what they think, right? How is an entire population educated enough? How can they know enough to decide what's right for themselves in terms of like a framework for their society? Can they decide for their home? Sure. Can they decide for their immediate community? Sure. Should they have representation? Absolutely. But there are other people who feel like, no, there should be a decider, and that person should, or a very small governing body, and they should take the information and data and then make the best decisions, right? Now, obviously that framework has a lot of potential for corruption, but it's interesting that there's another way of thinking how folks can govern, because
clearly
as you mentioned,
framework does as well.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, there are people that will elect a person who's not qualified to lead us all, and then that person, because they were elected, leads us all into the abyss, right? Anyway, back to what I'm talking about. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary of the White House. This is not about her, although we could talk about the glorious example of ebony excellence that she is until we're blue in the face, and I think we might. Right now, what I want to focus on is the woman calling her qualifications
a DEI-hire into question.
Okay. So here's where I want to go with that, and then I'm gonna unleash you or unbuckle you, whatever I said before. Okay. So what I did was I Googled Lauren Boebert. Okay. And specifically because I saw that she only had a GED. Funny that the press secretary has a master's degree and has worked in the job for 20 years, right? But I saw on social media that Lauren Boebert had a GED. So I Googled that. Does Lauren Boebert have a GED, or did she get a GED? So you can replicate these results. Did Lauren Boebert get a GED? You're able to see for yourself. Okay. The answer that I got back was Boebert dropped out of high school during her senior year in 2004. Okay. So
you mean the year she dropped out of high school
was the same year that
this young lady received her master's degree and started her career in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So you put it together for me. Thank you, Q. Always there when
I was asking a question. I wasn't certain.
The question
okay
is all we need.
Okay.
All right. Lauren Boebert dropped out of high school during her senior year in 2004 when she had a baby. She earned a GED certificate in 2020.
So 16 years later, right before she ran for office, I believe.
A month before her first election primary.
Okay, that's what I expected.
Boebert has stated that her family depended on welfare when she was growing up, and that she was raised in a Democratic household in a liberal area.
Isn't that something?
So hang on. 'Cause I'm gonna let you go, and then it's all yours. But there's been these terms assigned to black people, black women in particular, welfare queens and all this sort of stuff, right? And then now the new incarnation of that is DEI-hire, where
prior to that it was affirmative action hire.
There you go. And the idea there is to discredit a person's qualifications because they are black, rather than to look at, geez, what all did you have to get through to get here? Because it's tough, period. It's got to be extra tough doing it while black and a woman, right? But no, DEI-hire, right? So here is what it means to be blinded by privilege. This woman, Lauren Boebert, looked over the entirety of her own experience, saw no connective tissue, saw no shared struggle, saw none of that. Even though it's true, this is what comes up, and these are stories that she shared.
It's verifiable fact.
Yeah, but she didn't see any of that. She saw a DEI-hire. In other words, someone who's not qualified to be there. His only reason is that they're standing there is because they are black, they check a box, and they look good.
There was a quota to fill.
There you go, right? And for her, she is blinded by her own privilege, because you have to be in order to get something like that off. She ignored the fact that her own life, she got pregnant in high school, dropped out of she didn't even do the research, because her assumption is that this woman is not qualified because she is a DEI-hire. She's a black woman. That's the only place where it comes from. Now we can introduce race into the conversation. Now we can have that part of the conversation, because that's the only place it comes from. And I challenge you to convince me of anything different. And again, I don't want to call her racist. I want to call her blinded by her own privilege. But after you see that she's blinded by her own privilege, you see that takes a very dark, negative, angry turn. And now we can have the racist conversation. So now that we've started here, I know that you had a couple of bullet points, I should say, that you wanted to touch on as well.
I want to first point out that in 2004, when this young lady accusing her of being a DEI-hire was dropping out of school and not getting a high school diploma, Karine Jean-Pierre was the political director for Senator John Edwards' presidential campaign. I didn't want it to seem like she was like an intern or starting in some entry-level position. I want to give an example that's a little left or right, however you view it, of what we've been talking about so far.
Let's do it.
The conservative party in this country only exists because they've found a way to pull the blinders of privilege over the eyes of everyone, so that we all find a way to ignore that obvious connective tissue that you pointed out, that obvious shared struggle, and only protect, even at our own peril, our own privilege. Well, what do you mean, Q? I'm glad you asked. I am a heterosexual Christian black man. Mm-hmm. And if you remove the word black, I almost check every privilege box that this country has
healthy,
ever
English speaking
provided.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, I get it.
So it is very easy, as we've seen, for a Christian heterosexual black man to be blinded by privilege and stand next to a person like our former president and hail him as a great person, ignoring all the awful things that that person would have in store for people who look like you and have your shared experience, because you somehow made it to the position that you're in. When I see people who check the boxes that I check, not stand up for people who don't check all of those boxes is a very, very disheartening thing to witness. The example that I'll use most noticeably is our LGBTQ community, LGBTQ plus community, because I see people point the finger in judgment, look down their noses, and wave their Bibles at people in that community as somehow less deserving of all the wonderful things that life should provide all of us than they are. And in that division is how the other side remains in power. You could argue that a black, homosexual, atheist woman is a quadruple minority, does not check any of the boxes of being worth anything.
No power boxes there.
Looked down upon probably by each of the groups that she belongs.
There's someone that will find fault with her.
Yeah, your black Christian friends think that you're a sinner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your white straight friends see you as black and homosexual. Some of your white homosexual friends have the white box, which means there's a portion of their privilege that they have to protect and at some point will discredit yours. The women that you know that are married to men
that check all those boxes,
will vote against their own best interest and speak out and march and organize against their own best interest because they see the benefit of the privilege of their spouse.
Yeah.
Like there's so
Proximity
many, there's so many different ways that without even realizing it, in order to protect what privilege you sometimes are not even paying attention to the fact that you have, and or sometimes in this case, that you are very aware that you have, that you will ignore that very privilege that allows you to have the life that you enjoy. Because if you sat their resumes next to one another, I say one could argue, but it's just way too obvious that Lauren, how do you say her name?
Boebert.
Mm-hmm. Did nothing to be qualified to be in the position that she's in.
Q.
Nothing at all.
Stuck the landing. Look at you.
And looks around at everybody else and points at how they're somehow being made an exception for.
Yeah.
It is maddening, but it is how we got here. Right? When you look at how people vote, when you look at how people organize, when you look at what's most important to most people, we've found a way to disassociate ourselves from people who don't share every experience that we have and have found a way to litigate our own privilege and credit it to our own merit and our own hard work, and don't realize that some of that was privilege, and in a lot of cases, all of it.
Sure. Let me jump in here. This is still you, but that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where I was saying that everybody works hard. I just push back against that. I know you don't like when I call myself lazy because I know that I'm not lazy, but I work hard so that I can be lazy.
Is maniacal. So lazy is as big an antonym as you could use to describe yourself.
Fair point. But there are people that work harder than me. There are bona fide workaholics that exist. And if you were to compare anything, career accolades, net worth, pick a thing, it might on paper look like I have more of those things than indeed the workaholics. Okay? Hard work is something that everyone does. And granted, there are people who work harder, but that in and of itself does not guarantee the levels and the types of success that we espouse in this country. So that cannot be in and of itself a reliable predictor of outcomes.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
We want credit for all that we think we accomplished,
Right.
and will not acknowledge where there was grace and luck and help.
Luck and help. See, opportunities and you know, what school did your dad go to, and is that why you get to go to that school?
Don't say the N word. Don't say nepotism, because that doesn't exist.
On and on and on, right? And I get it. You know, maybe for some people who are white and check all these boxes, they had no nepotism. They didn't have a daddy that went to a school. They didn't have, you know, whatever. But there are still invisible forces that, if they don't work for you, at least they're not working against you.
They're not working against you.
Right. And so that privilege, again, just being a mediocre white woman who did everything wrong in her life. She was pregnant. I mean, not wrong, but everything that we use, you know, by societal standards, she's a failure. She didn't graduate high school. She has a GED. She had kids in high school, all this sort of stuff, right? That's a failure on paper, right?
Oh, well, that's not a failure on paper. It's just that those are the type of things that would disqualify us.
Right. Okay.
The type of things intentionally used to disqualify poor people.
Okay. So watch this.
Intentionally.
So watch where we're going. Now, what we're seeing is a mediocre, if I'm being honest, white woman who is now one of the more famous lawmakers that we have in this land.
Gross.
And we have a black woman with over 2 decades of experience on the job, crushing it with a master's degree, getting picked apart by the very woman who is mediocre. And this can only happen if a person is blind to their own privilege. If this only happens to a person that thinks, well, I worked hard for my position, everyone else should. That's the only scenario where
everyone else didn't.
Boom. So, that's a conversation that we might have to revisit, if I'm honest. But for now, we are going to leave that one where it is. As always, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to Civic Cipher. I have been your host, Ramses Ja.
I am still Q Ward. I'm trying to hold on to that as long as I can.
Hey man, we almost at the finish line for this chapter. I know we got a long road ahead of us, but for this particular chapter, we're almost there. Do us a favor, follow us on our social media. Shoot Q some love and encouragement. You can find me at Ramses Ja.
I am Q Ward on all socials.
And then, of course, follow the show at Civic Cipher, CIVICCIPHER. Hit the website, civiccipher.com. You can download this and any previous episodes. You can shoot us any questions you might have, any topics you might want us to cover.
Like, comment, share, subscribe.
Hit us on YouTube. That is youtube.com/Civic Cipher. And until next week, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.